Well, we are live from the headquarters of the INOXGFL group, and it's a mammoth group in making, right? Simply because, or rather, it's a mammoth group already, but to be becoming very large because there is an erstwhile chemicals business, wind, the backbone for all of the things that Devansh, Jain and his group are doing right now. And Devansh, absolute delight being here. Thank you so much for having us.
To have you.
Yeah. Now, just tell us a bit about this, right? Because when one looks at what INOXGFL was, say, 5-7 years ago, to what you are right now, to what you presumably would be in another 5-7 years, the mind boggles to think of how you are building this out. So tell us a bit about what you are right now and what you will be 5 years out.
Look, I mean, just to start with, maybe 3 or 4 years ago in our new avatar, the INOXGFL group, we had two verticals, chemicals and renewables. Obviously, renewables were struggling at that point in time because we had just come off the transition from feed-in tariffs to auctions. The chemical arm was a large part of the group. Obviously, that was the starting point for the entire group, Gujarat Fluorochemicals Limited. And it was India's largest refrigerants company. We forward integrated, backward integrated into fluoropolymers and various other things. But, you know, renewables was the future. We were just waiting for the opportune time to come in. I think where we are today, I think the renewable pie and our chemicals arm are virtually on par with each other, where we sit today. I see as we move forward, I think the entire renewable pie of our group is probably going to be 2.5 times the size of the chemical pie. And not to say the chemical pie is not growing.
It's degrowing, yeah, exactly.
Under GFCL EV, we are setting up the world's largest battery chemical complex outside of China. Very ambitious growth plans for our EV vertical under Gujarat Fluoro, under a company called GFCL EV.
Yeah.
But putting that aside, the entire renewable pie which we're building, which is Inox Wind, Inox Green, Inox Solar, Inox Neo under Inox Clean, I think it's mammoth. And I think we're very excited about the entire renewable opportunity.
Yeah. So one thing, Devansh, is what the country has stated as a goal, right? Because what India wants to, and therefore the opportunity pie is very large. Two is the ability of the country to execute these numbers, right? It's always good. मतलब गुजराती में कहते हैं कि निशान चूक माफ, नीचू निशान माफ नहीं. So is the country on that path that right now, let's set up ambitious targets. Whether we reach those or no is separate. Or do you believe these are realistic targets?
No, first and foremost, if you look at the tweet which came out day before yesterday from Modi ji and Prahlad ji, yeah, India achieved 50% non-fossil fuel-based power 5 years ahead of schedule, ahead of 2030. Now the point is, I'm a very optimistic person, right? And there are some naysayers and pessimistic people. Now, effectively, if Modi ji set out a target of 500 gigawatts by 2030 or 32, and we achieve, say, 450, or we are 1 year late, kuch bolenge, yaar, fail ho gaya. Earlier, back in the day, our targets used to be ki 10 gigawatt 5 saal mein karna hai. I mean, you know, so frankly speaking, look at the sheer magnitude we are building. Look at the volumes we are setting up. I mean, putting aside China, India is probably the largest renewable country in the world.
That's true.
We're setting up close to now, hopefully this year, I mean, we believe wind will be about a 6 to 10 gigawatt market in the next year to 2 years. Solar is a 30 to 40 gigawatt market in this year and next year. The sheer numbers are just massive.
That is.
And I think we are executing. Obviously, we're a democracy. So to some extent, there are sometimes some policy flip-flops. I think a lot of that has been sorted out by the government. State issues, ROWs. Look, you need to be strong on execution. And that's, you know, you need to have it in your DNA.
Yeah.
Just cribbing and complaining, I don't believe in that.
Okay. So when I look at the group, and allow me some mistakes here because you are doing a number of things, right?
Sure.
But the one that is well documented and known is that you were due to do 800 or whatever, 700 or 5 in FY25 in Inox Wind.
That's right.
You will do 1200 and presumably do 2 gigawatts by FY27.
Sure.
That is documented, well known.
Right.
Tell us about the unknowns now. Not too much is unknown because you said in the con calls, but the last results, we haven't had a chance to talk. So we'd love to know what's the updated unknown.
Look, basically what's happening is, you know, these numbers were set out when we thought wind was doing about 6 gigawatt, 7 gigawatt. Having said that, the balance sheet has become so strong for Inox Wind today because we've merged the listed parent, Inox Wind Energy Limited, with Inox Wind Limited. So the balance sheet is very robust. It's a net cash company. What we're focused on now is we're ramping up capacity. We're setting up more manufacturing units because we need more blade facilities for our larger blades, our 3.3 megawatt turbine, our 4.5 megawatt turbine, which will get introduced over the course of this year. And to that extent, I think if India is going to move towards the 8 to 10 gigawatt market, we're going to take much more market share than what we are comfortable at this point in time. So 1200, yes. 2 could be much larger. Thereafter could be much larger. I think that's number one. Number two, I think the entire game in India has become RTC, hybrid, FDRE.
Could you just explain for our viewers? Yeah.
RTC means round the clock, FDRE means fixed dispatch renewable energy, and hybrid basically means wind and solar combined. In crux, simplistically put, it's basically putting wind, solar and battery together in virtually all these tenders, right? So that you have more firm power as opposed to only plain wind which is up and down or plain solar which is only during the daytime. So as you put in more and more renewable energy into the grid, you want to look at grid stability as well. And grid stability mandates that you have wind for sure, solar and some amount of battery.
Right.
So when we are setting up projects for people, or whether we are setting up in Inox Clean, or for across our IPPs like NTPC, Amplus, Continuum, CESC, whoever it may be, everybody is looking at hybrid RTC, FDRE. And what we are seeing is when they're doing that, they said, "Arey boss, aap wind de hi rahe ho. Solar or battery ka kya ho raha hai?" Because GFL EV makes the heart of the batteries in any case. That's the reason where we announced our massive foray into solar, where we're setting up almost 10 gigawatts of capacities across the board. So we have our module plants, we have our cell plants. Our module plant is in Gujarat. We are setting up a massive complex now in Orissa, which is modules and cells. And I think we are becoming a one-stop place for anybody setting up hybrid FDRE, where we supply wind, which is complex. We anyways make the grid for these guys in turnkey. And then we'll supply the solar piece. So wind is so complex, solar is just a very simple piece. So, you know, if this is 4x the price of the solar piece that we provide.
Yeah.
So for anybody buying our wind, solar is anyways going to be a natural fit. And thereafter, we're going to start supplying batteries as well. The storage, best. We're not competing on the mobility side, but the best is something which eventually we will also start supplying.
Okay.
So, you know, end-to-end solutions provided.
And when does this get housed? So for example, I know that the chemicals piece is entirely Gujarat Fluoro, if I'm not wrong. All the wind energy principally under Inox Wind. I mean,
That's right.
Yes, there is Green, which is a subsidiary of Wind, listed entity, but under Inox Wind. All of this comes under a third entity, and where does BESS come in between there?
So we have GFL, which is chemicals. It has GFCL EV under GFL, which is the EV arm. Inox Wind has the manufacturing arm, which owns Inox Green, our O&M services company, and a soon-to-be listed through demerger company called Inox Renewable Solutions, which is the entire EPC arm of Inox Wind.
Okay.
It's currently fully owned by,
Inox.
95% owned by Inox Wind broadly, which is getting demerged, leading to automatic listing. That's going to be the EPC arm for the entire group. That's a company where we have cranes, we have transformer manufacturing. Now the new forays, which are housed under a company called Inox Clean, which are directly owned by the Jain family, which are owned by the promoters, right? That is got Inox Solar, our entire solar manufacturing arm, and Inox Neo, our entire IPP arm. So that's the third vertical, which is fully owned by the family.
Got it. So now, when you think of the next 5 years, Devansh, or next 7 years, or however longer you want to think about it, tell me what is the arguably one of the faster growing pieces, and if I were to ask you in an investor term, right, that investor thinks of both the price appreciation but as well as the value in each of these, because a low base business will probably grow faster. But when you think of this whole piece, what accelerates the fastest over the next 5-7 years in your mind? I'm asking you to choose one of the few children that you have.
Very hard. Having said that, I think obviously GFL is a gorilla, right? As I say many times, right? Inox Wind is a mini gorilla which should become a gorilla, but obviously large bases. I think Green is very small today, and I think Green is going to ramp up very, very rapidly, right? Obviously, a lot of that value will go into wind because wind owns it. But I think EV is something which is under GFL. That is probably going to be the fastest growing animal within these entities, Green and GFCL EV. Having said that, then there's a privately owned company, Inox Clean, for which we filed a confidential DRHP. So naturally, I can't speak about it in the public domain, but that's a baby, and we've filed under confidential DRHP. So I think I'm putting a lot of my energies behind that company at this point.
At this point of time as well. And I don't want you to divulge anything which you can't divulge, but are there some timelines that you're looking for this baby to actually get listed? If you can talk about it, if you can't, not a problem.
I don't think I can talk about it, but hopefully.
Okay, fair call. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Okay, fair call. Are there hiccups, Devansh, to this thing? Because in some of the con calls you've said, right, that in terms of evacuation, in terms of other factors, there are hiccups to this story. It's not entirely a very, very smooth run. What are these?
Look, I mean, I wouldn't call them hiccups. Those are necessary evils, if I may say so, which are part of the business. And how do you eliminate that? You eliminate that by planning ahead of schedule. So for example, across our renewable piece, we carry almost 5.5 gigawatt of project side inventory for wind. On the hybrid, that's another 8-9 gigawatt of solar which we carry. So if you have multiple sites, connectivity taken in advance, then these issues don't crop up. You know, people suddenly come and say, हमें project लगाना था, आज evacuation के लिए apply किया, अरे boss अगर आज करोगे आप, तो 2 साल बाद मिलेगी evacuation.
Right.
Then don't crib and say the government is not ready. Yeah. You need to plan much ahead. You need to invest, you know, well ahead of the curve.
Right.
That's why we've invested significant capital to create this almost, you know, as I said, between wind and solar, we control almost 13, 14 gigawatts of project site inventory, which is massive.
Right.
And if you don't have it, then you're cribbing. This site got delayed, that got delayed, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, yes, at times you have ROW issues in states and sites. But that's part and parcel of the game. If something really gets stalled, go to another site, yeah.
Right.
And then come back after a period of time. But, you know, I don't think that's a... at Inox, we don't believe that's a problem for us.
Okay, let's talk about the baby which has really caught the imagination of people over the last 3 years, and which is Inox Wind, right?
Sure.
So I'm trying to understand this, Devansh. One, it's a great growing piece, cash throwing piece, if I'm not wrong, even if it's a guzzling piece.
Sure.
And maybe we can sit and do this. Well, lovely lawn, by the way.
Thank you.
When we try and think of how you're going to piece this piece together, right? 2 gigawatts by FY27, throwing up enough cash, but at the same time, there is periodic dilution that you're talking about. I believe 3 or 4 days ago, you spoke about the need to raise more capital as well. Why is that the case?
So what we're doing in Inox Wind, during the bad phase, when the company was literally bankrupt, the promoters pumped in almost 560 crores at zero cost.
Right.
Or we pumped in a little bit more, which got consumed.
Right.
There's another 560 crores lying in Inox Wind, which is technically a liability on the balance sheet of Inox Wind.
Okay.
It's at zero cost from the promoters, right? But Wind needs to pay it back to the promoters at some point in time.
Yes.
So what we're doing is we don't want the money back.
Okay.
We are showing faith in the company by converting it into equity at market price.
Okay.
So effectively, we announced a rights issue, and that rights issue basically gives everybody, existing shareholders, everybody the right to participate in the same ratio at which they exist. And we are pumping in the holding that we have in the company, the entire amount back into the company. So what that does is 2 things. One, it makes the balance sheet that much stronger, and the liability goes off. Because now Inox Wind doesn't need to pay back the promoters.
Right.
And second, by way of the other investors coming in, Inox Wind gets some more cash. We don't need it because we're a net cash company. But I also don't want to take any money away from Inox Wind to the promoters, because we believe the growth is so strong. A little bit of extra cushion in the company is not bad.
Okay, so you're not raising fresh capital to execute, as I understand.
We are not raising fresh capital to execute. It's because of the rights issue. There is some amount of fresh capital coming into the company, which will reside in the company, just as.
But the primary reason is to essentially resolve this promoters' money.
Because effectively, if, you know, to be fair, if we only did a preferential issue and converted the promoters' money, you know, every shareholder would come in and say, why are you doing it only to the promoters at this price?
Sure, sure.
And to be honest, we deliberated it. We thought of multiple things. It's great for me to take all the money we've pumped into the company. Very good. Yeah, we'll get our money back. We've given it at zero cost for the past 3, 4, 5 years. But we don't look at it like this. We look at companies becoming stronger, bigger and bigger. Okay. And what we saw, Wind's path ahead is so large. We don't want this 550, 600 crores. It's too small for us.
Can you talk about this path?
Yeah.
And will this path be accompanied by a larger share of operation and maintenance contracts? Because some of your peer sets are talking now that they are not taking up contracts which do not have O&M, because that's a very nice ROC delivering business. So talk to us a bit about
certainly.
both.
2 things, both. I think, as I'd mentioned, I think Inox Wind, which is owned by Wind, is going to go through massive growth. We are looking at multiple acquisitions. We've done a couple of acquisitions. We've recently forayed into solar. We've taken almost 1.8 gigawatt of contracts across the sector. And I think that business is going to explode as we move forward, to be honest.
Okay.
It has a lot of capital available. Inox Wind has almost 650 crores of capital available on call for acquisitions. And if we need more, we could potentially raise more capital if and when we need. Because it's a net cash company, very high return, very high ROC, ROE, no working capital requirements. It's a no-brainer. But Inox Wind itself is undergoing massive growth. So if you look at 700 becoming, say, 1200, which we've publicly stated, 2000, again, which is in the public domain, that in itself means a top line of, say, 37, 3800 going up to almost 15,000 crores within 2 years, and potentially more. So effectively, having a little bit, at that scale, having 1,000 odd crores of cash on the balance sheet, plus minus, is not a big deal. And as I've said multiple times publicly, we are very averse to debt. I frankly am allergic to debt after the harrowing experience we had in surviving. As you know, we were the only wind company in this country to have survived with zero haircut to any banker. Every creditor, every employee, every banker was paid the last paisa. So I am very allergic to debt. I mean, whether you like it or you don't like it, the entire DNA of our group is built on cash flow and cash. We don't want debt in our companies, in our group.
Okay. The numbers are slightly different than what I had penciled in, because I thought from 3,500 crores in FY25, you probably, or estimates range from 8,000 to 10,000 or 11,000 crores at best till FY27. You talked about a number of 15,000 crores top line by FY27.
That's right.
Is that true?
That's broadly, broad numbers, because effectively...
So at 2 gigs, you actually reach about 15,000 crores.
So, it's a blend of turnkey equipment, so it depends what your ratio is. But thumb rule, assume you do 6.5 crores, right? That's about 13,000. And then the O&M piece is so large that effectively, thumb rule now, whether 13 or 16,
sure.
I don't know the exact number, but ballpark,
broadly
we
you
would be at
there.
about 15K, yeah.
Okay, great. And you believe that most of this growth or all of this growth will happen without you needing any additional equity capital?
Oh, we don't need capital. I mean, we're throwing up cash now.
Right.
So where's the question of raising capital? I mean, we're doing the rights issue also only to be very fair to all our shareholders. I mean, we merged Inox Wind Energy Limited into Inox Wind for minority shareholders.
Yes.
Not for anything else. Otherwise, I would have had a bigger grip by controlling that entity, controlling shareholding in Wind. I would have more control over Inox Wind. I mean, but for us as a group, I think we protect every shareholder, whether you're minority, whether you're majority, whether you are a large investor. And I think that's, I mean, to be honest, I think the markets have rewarded us to some extent. I don't think full value is there, but I think the markets appreciate us. And I think for the past 3 years in the new avatar of our group, we've been walking the talk, at least to the extent we're not God, but to the extent that we can visualize. We have been communicating, we have been walking the talk. We are letting investors come in at all different stages to make money. And God willing, hopefully, we will execute, we will deliver. So far, we have been doing that. And I hope we will continue doing that.
Most certainly. And Devansh, you would reckon that a lot of this growth will not necessarily happen only organically. You will presumably have to make a series of inorganic moves across entities, and you are probably geared to do that.
Yes, so in Inox Green, for example, we acquired 2 small entities. We've recently taken over a large solar portfolio of another, troubled entity. We are acquiring a couple of other entities, working towards it. I think in Inox Clean, which is our privately owned entity, what's in the public domain is we acquired an asset from Sky Power, one of the largest, IPPs based out of Canada. And I mean, as we move forward, I'm sure there will be acquisitions across the group.
Got it. Devansh, you've been through a time when this industry was almost gone, right? There would be recent memories of that tough time. How do you, as an entrepreneur, develop this gumption of taking these large bets in a sector which has got cycles, right? Doesn't the recency bias come in and make you a bit cautious? Just trying to understand the mind of the entrepreneur here.
Look, again, you said some of these. I think I remember every little piece of what I went through for those 5 years. Again, not sleeping for 5 years and having every possible storm thrown at you at the same time makes you stronger. And I think rather than crying or cribbing about that, I think I've used that to just become so strong and create strategies across the businesses we are building that, God forbid, a situation like that was to arise in any of these arms. Sure, that arm will struggle, but we don't owe money to anybody. And we've created so many arms now across the group that, for example, at that point in time, it was only GFL and Wind. When, we were in the INOXGFL group. I'll give you some numbers, but I'll talk about that. But today we have Wind, we have Green, we have Solar, we have Clean, we have GFL, we have GFL EV, we have the family office. So God forbid something was to happen to one arm, there are 6 other arms sitting. That time we had 2. One failed, only one was left. And we have every entity today is virtually net cash. I mean, putting aside working capital, every entity is net cash. Now, let me give you an example, right? When shit hit the roof, the entire group market cap was less than 6,000 crores. Our group debt was about 5,000. Today, the listed and unlisted arms are north of 1 lakh crore. We're a net cash group. So, this has happened in 2.5 years.
Yeah, quite
so look
stunning.
at the avatar, and I'm not saying we've done a miracle, but I think we're building massively. But we've structured it in this manner. And you asked me, what am I doing as an entrepreneur? We've ensured there is no group guarantee, there is no cross-holding from one entity to another entity, 3 different legs. Every company goes and raises its own capital. Sometimes people ask, how do you allocate capital? We don't have that challenge, because when we look at these entities and we see how much growth is available, we raise that much capital or we generate that much capital that each of these entities can grow on its own without me hitting GFL EV or green or clean or solar. Please go and build and scale up to the extent that you can. We'll bring in the capital.
Yeah, sorry, what I meant to ask about what you're doing as an entrepreneur is not the actions that you're taking, but in the mindset that you're making as an entrepreneur and as a promoter to take such large bets. That's what I was driving towards. A lot of, see, the startup culture in India is very high, right, Devansh? They would look up to people like you who are successful entrepreneurs to try and understand how you think about risk reward. Can you talk about that?
Look, you know, I have seen my father build businesses right from when I was born, right? Or it was always in my DNA. Dad was perpetually working. He's a workaholic. He's always discussing business. 99.99% of the conversations I have with my father are work. I mean, if you don't have work, it's, "Arey, kuch ladaai ho gayi kya? Kuch jhamela ho raha hai kya?" So I have always been in this atmosphere of thinking, numbers, visualizing. And I think Dad was very aggressive when whatever my grandfather started. Dad was very aggressive. He went to IIM, there was nothing much. He came back and really built a lot of the companies in this group and others. And I think, if I may say so, I'm far more aggressive and ambitious than that. So risk-taking is in our DNA. Having said that, you need to calibrate risk. It's not कि बल्ला घुमा दिया and वो ball ने wicket को मारा out हो गया. Hey, listen, you need to know how to bat. So how do we do it? When we take these bold bets, as I said, we look at capital. Do we have capital? If something goes wrong, what is the backstop? What will fail? You know, for example, maybe someone has the ability to take $1 billion risk, right? And let it go. Maybe I have the ability to take 1,000 crore risk. Maybe someone else has the ability to take 1 crore risk. I think today it sounds large because we know the renewable sector inside out. We know the pitfalls. We've seen cycles. We know our moats. And we're leveraging that to build out this entire piece. And I think, as I believe, I think there are two themes which will take up maximum capital globally. One is the entire digital framework, whether AI, chips, etc. And the second is energy transition. And given our strengths, which we've built now in wind, which honestly I think are virtually close to impossible to replicate, barring 1 or 2 players who we exist in wind, I think we're leveraging all of that to build out all these future ventures. And for the outside world, they may seem very risky. Or how are you able to do it? How can you scale up so massively? We know it inside out. We've thought through a lot of this. It's not that we just decided to get in or, solar is the buzzword, so we do it. We could have done solar 5 years ago, 10 years ago. For example, we got into it when ALCM got announced, where it means domestic content for cell, because then it became a big boy play. Why we also did it when we sell wind turbines, say 2 gigawatt a year, it's 8 crores, 7 crores, 6 crores. Modules are 2 crores. So, and wind is very complex. Solar anybody can do to some extent, not to ridicule that. It's complex.
Yeah.
So when we're doing this, ye to bikhega hi bikhega. And that's when we saw that we have a very large in-house, market available through Inox Wind and for a captive requirement. That's how we went and did it. The IPP business, we needed a lot of captive power. Our project execution skills and costs are much lower than anybody else. I think another point is within our group, there is no padding up. A lot of other groups have a lot of padding up happening. I'm sure you all understand what I mean by that. So our IRRs are always higher. Our costs are always leaner. And that's why we're also able to raise a lot of equity in the markets for newer ventures. I mean, some of the marqueest of investors have come into Inox Clean. And we were able to do it because they have faith, they have courage that what we do, we'll give it our best. I'm not saying we won't fail or we won't make mistakes. But we're doing everything with the right intention, with the right commitment. And I think that sets us apart to some extent.
Okay, last couple of questions. With all the cash that the businesses will generate over the next 3-5 years, even as you expand, What do you do with all of that? Do you deepen these businesses because the opportunity size is for a much longer period of time, or do you look for newer verticals?
Look, certain companies don't require more cash. So for example, GFL became large, we started building EV, but now EV is raising its own currency. So some companies will use their currency for growth, but a lot of the companies will also throw up a lot of cash which will not get utilized for growth. I think we'll deal with it when we get there. Obviously, you can't have a chemical company setting up a cement plant or a steel plant, right? But I think there is, it's also not a bad thing to have certain companies with significant amount of cash. Let's get there. And then we have dividend policies also. But also our mindset is always to keep growing. We'll find newer ideas, we'll look at newer opportunities, we'll keep scaling up.
When do you think you get there to positions wherein the cash is a lot larger and you have to think about what to do with it?
Look, I think wind we should get there by the end of this year.
By the end of this year, okay.
GFL is already there, but now GFL EV is raising its own capital. Otherwise, GFL would be deploying far more into EV. So I think GFL is already there. Wind is getting there. Green we're using for acquisitions. EV obviously will deploy all its capital into growth at this point in time, besides raising some capital. Inox Clean and Solar are in a massive build-out phase at this point in time. So obviously, they will keep consuming all the cash which gets generated. So that's broadly how we look at these different entities.
Got it. Okay. Devansh, lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for having us at your lovely office, and all the best with all that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Niraj. It was a pleasure chatting.
The pleasure was entirely mine.
Thank you.
Thank you, and viewers, thanks for tuning in.